nothing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Squat Cobbler, episode 47. We are doing the 25th Alice Cooper album. Something really special for you guys tonight, only because I feel like this is an album that's greatly underrated. I'm Mike, at Official Pagan on everything, and I'm curious to hear my co-host thoughts on this. Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly, at KELLYTHUL on Twitter, and I was excited to do this album, and then I re-listened to prep to it, and I became even increasingly more excited.
I got scared for a second there. I thought you were going to say, now I don't want to do this album at all.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Let's move on. No,
that was it. Dead last. End of review.
That's right. This is barely raise your fist and yell. Yeah, it's interesting because you and I have both talked about this a little bit. This is a forgotten album. This, for some reason, does not appear to be on a lot of folks' radar, and that is an incredible shame.
No, and it's weird because I remember when Dirty Diamonds came out, not that there was a huge marketing push behind this, and we've talked about this up until recently. Some of the later Alice records maybe didn't get that big of a push, and they almost sort of rested on the fact that it was an Alice record. There's a built-in fan base and audience for this. So some of these labels maybe didn't feel the need to push it. But I remember even Dirty Diamonds getting a bigger push than this.
Yeah, I think it did. Oddly enough, though, this album was Alice's highest chart presence since Hey Stupid. Ended up being number 53 on the Billboard charts. So it seemed to do well, but boy, you just never hear people talk about it a whole lot. I really don't know why it kind of vanished. And they did do, and we'll include this in the blog post, a nice supporting video for it.
Yes.
That is actually very, very cool as well. But yeah, it didn't seem to have, certainly, Mike and I have talked about it. Paranormal, they have done a tremendous job in promoting Paranormal, and that's reflected in its adoption of people listening to it. But I don't think this got the love. There was a video. It did well on the charts, but it didn't have the energy behind it that Paranormal did.
No, definitely not. And honestly, the video is really the only real push that I remember behind this. Now, I did read about this album on various metal sites, and they were particularly excited because, we're about to get into this, so it's not much of a spoiler. This is a Steven-oriented album, and this is a return to, the heavy concept Alice that we're so familiar with from so many of his classic records. So there was a lot of talk about that, but not really a lot of talk about the album itself. Like, this isn't something when I'm speaking with other Alice fans that you really hear brought up.
Yeah, which I don't get, because, and even you and I, when we talk about the stuff that we really like, if we're kind of chatting about Alice, this occasionally comes up to go, oh yeah, that's underrated and stuff. But I don't know why it doesn't get a little more love, because it, spoiler, my opinion, deserves a lot of love. This is, I find, an incredible album.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I don't understand where it comes from. And it's unfortunate in a way, because this precedes Welcome to My Nightmare, which, I feel like they put so much behind that maybe that's part of why this gets overlooked, because there was a lot more hype behind that than there was behind this record. And also, if I remember correctly, there was supposed to be a sequel to this record that got shelved, or that idea got shelved, to focus on Welcome to My Nightmare.
Yeah, that's correct. It was going to be called Night Shift, was going to be the sequel to this, which would have been, if it was going to continue on the track of this album, would have been amazing. So it's a disappointment. Now, maybe that will make its way back at some point in time as a concept. But yeah, it was interesting that there was a shift from Night Shift to Welcome to My Nightmare, which obviously is a sequel of sorts as well.
Yeah, it's nothing against Welcome to My Nightmare. It's just I thought this was not just a really strong musical album. This was a great, strong return to his concept albums. And I would say one of the best concept albums that he's done, in the sense of being a concept album of a continuous story from beginning to end, not a concept album in the sense of like Brutal Planet, where it's conceptually, dark, but the concept story from beginning to end, bringing the Steven character back. Like, I just really wanted more of this. And maybe we should touch a little bit on what the storyline of this is. But first, I wanted to get to the artwork. What are your first impressions of the cover of this?
So this is a great album, and I believe the album cover work is befitting of this album, because this is dark. This is a story about we'll get into it a little bit more, but a psychopath, and it's a very kind of grim picture of Alice, interestingly lit. And his eye makeup on this one, it's an interesting cross between, we talked about this last episode. So it's the traditional Alice Cooper narrow line off the eye makeup. Typically that's just one line, but because this is Along Came a Spider, you've got 4 lines coming down the bottom, and you can assume 4 lines coming up the top. So it's kind of a hybrid of the more spidery, kind of blobby makeup from Love It to Death and Eyes of Alice Cooper and the traditional Alice Cooper makeup. But this is a dark album, and this is a dark cover, and I think the photography on it is excellent. And so I love the cover.
Yeah, same here. I love the bluish tint to it. The purple around his eyes. I like this sort of reworked version of the spider eye that we know from the greatest Alice Cooper album, Love It to Death. But yeah, I just think that this is a great cover. And did you have any thoughts about the other artwork?
So it all kind of fits in really well with, I mean, and you can, I guess to me, you can consider the artwork continuing on to the video and the supporting material and all that, but there's it's laying the story down about this individual and a return of Stephen and all that. And it's so tight and well connected. And it's nice to see the eye makeup from the greatest Alice Cooper album of all time, Billion Dollar Babies, be slightly modified to support this album.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, the storyline behind this revolves around a serial killer called Spider, and he is taking legs of his victims to construct his own spider.
Because it's a leg chopped off and it's wrapping the remainder of the body in silk, also very spider-like. So just an incredible, and as Alice did interviews on this as it was coming up, it was this idea of a kind of a calm, cool, collected serial killer, which to a degree, he's at least methodical in terms of his approach. But I think as we go through this album, I wouldn't necessarily depict Spider as calm, cool, and collected, but it's definitely a man that knows what he wants to do.
Great concept record, great art. Unfortunately, we're not going to get the sequel, at least not yet. But let's get into the tracks. Let's talk this thing out, because I don't know about you. I'm not sure where this is going to fall on my list. I have a feeling it's going to be high, but I really, really have a lot of consideration here. So I think this is going to be one of those ones, as we talk it out, it's definitely going to bounce around. So the first track on this is actually kind of 2 tracks. We have a prologue and then the song I Know Where You Live. What are your thoughts here, sir?
So this is an incredibly tight, well-constructed album to support the storyline, from the prologue to the epilogue to everything in between. So the prologue does the job. It's a spoken prologue of kind of a newscaster depicting the situation, and then it rolls into the first song, which is I Know Where You Live. And so the prologue is sufficiently concerning, and then all of a sudden, this first song comes ripping into you, and it's a rocker. It's hard. The drums are relentless in leading through there. It's a rocking stage setter, and I love this song. I think this album is full of songs that I really think are fantastic. I don't know how many of them are playlist, but they're just so good. I think it's an incredibly strong to begin with. And then the other very interesting thing I thought is that just hit me with a punch is about 2/3 of the way through, this is a song about I Know Where You Live. And it's, we're hearing it from Spider's point of view. And there's this line where he kind of swings around and says, but I'm there. And he says, but I'm there. And a bunch of folks join in the chorus on it. And it's just such a punch that you almost kind of lean back when it happens. It's so strong. So I think it is an incredibly strong start, very much in line with it. And I think it's a fantastic song.
Completely agree. And I love the prologue as well. It, right from the beginning, kind of grabs you, draws you into the story. I'm just really into it. I Know Where You Live. It almost feels like something that sonically could have been on Dirty Diamonds, because it does have that a little bit of that garage rock kind of sound to it, but it's darker.
Yeah, it's darker. And boy, you hit, the theme's been set, and this thing takes off right into it, marrying Alice is singing, the music, and the storyline all together.
Absolutely. And that takes us to our second song, Vengeance Is Mine, which is featuring somebody named Slash.
Yeah, I think this guy's got a future. This Slash guy, he seems to be a fairly talented gentleman. Also featured heavily in the supporting video for this. Vengeance Is Mine is an incredibly great live song. It comes across almost equally as strong in this studio version. It is, in my opinion, I Know Where You Live. I think this is a notch above that. And just kind of the break in the middle where we get this kind of vengeance is just so powerful. And it just kind of further reinforces that this Spider guy is not a good guy, not a happy guy, got some issues to work through. And I think this is an album that starts off with 2 incredibly strong songs in a row.
Completely agree with that. Not only is it another strong song, I'm with you with this is even stronger than the opening. So this is, we had a little bit of an issue with Dirty Diamonds where we started strong and then there's some peaks and valleys to that record. And this is something where not only do we kick things off great, but now we're kind of ratcheting it up a notch with Vengeance Is Mine. This Slash guy did a pretty good job. I'm pretty sure off the strength of this song, he's actually touring with Richard Fortus's band right now. So probably off of, his introduction to the world from this song.
Clearly a springboard.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what his plans are beyond this tour with Richard's band, but he might have a future for himself in music if he sticks with it.
Yep. We're pulling for him.
And as Kelly said, he is featured in the music video as well. Now, what's cool about the video, which we haven't gotten into yet, we might as well since, this kicks it off, is the video is 10 minutes long and is actually a medley of 3 songs from this album, with Vengeance Is Mine being the first one. Now, what did you think about that approach? Would you have rather 3 different videos, or did you like that sort of short film compilation?
I really liked the package. I thought it was good. I thought their selection of songs, there's a lot to choose from on this album. I thought they made some good choices on that. And it really conveys the spirit of the storyline well. And so I'm comfortable. I'm a little murky because Rob Zombie had some involvement with it. I don't know whether he was the producer or not, but he's not immediately credited. When you see the video and they throw some of the credits up at the beginning, but I know he had some involved. But I think I like their selections of songs, and I really like the 10-minute promo.
Yeah, no, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was an interesting approach to it. Rather than do one for each song, they kind of put all their eggs in one basket and did this one, big video for this. So Rob Zombie's involvement in it, from what I remember, is the video was actually directed by Piggy D, who is the bass player in Rob Zombie's band. He was also, I know he played with Wednesday 13 and some other people as well. But at the time that he was doing this, he was working with Rob Zombie.
Yeah, you're right. That's the connection there. It's been a long time since I've logged into Wikipedia as a content updater. But on the Wikipedia entry for Along Came a Spider, they do mention the music video, and they do mention in that Piggy D. But when they list the folks who appear in the video, they cover Alice, of course, and Slash is featured predominantly. Eric Singer, the drummer, is also in it because there's some kind of live band stuff. But Chuck Garrick, and I'm a big Garrick head, Chuck is also present in the middle part of this video. And he's not accredited on Wikipedia, and so that is something we need to correct.
Absolutely. Now, are you an editor of Wikipedia, sir?
The bar's low to become an editor to Wikipedia. I think you need a login and a password. But I have done, typically my Wikipedia updates have been to Tony OK entries on Wikipedia. But yes, I have made edits to Wikipedia.
Interesting. I have not, personally. I have a little bit of a strange relationship with Wikipedia. People have apparently made entries for things related to me, and I don't know, there's just been weird things from it. So I have a weird kind of stance with Wikipedia, and I know that there's a lot of misinformation on there as well. And I do think, though, you need to get on there and add Mr. Garrick to that.
Yeah, and I'll back off the misleading Mike Belinsky posts that I've been doing on Wikipedia at some point in time.
No, it's just weird. Like it was brought to my attention that things were added about me and taken off and just like weird stuff. And I don't know, because you don't know who's doing it or anything like that. But one of my highlights of my entire career is I am used as a source on the Vanilla Ice Wikipedia page. So, not to brag.
Very impressive.
So, that brings us to our next track on this album, Wake the Dead. And that features the second best singer of Black Sabbath, Mr. Ozzy Osbourne.
Yes, on kind of co-vocals and harmonica. So this was, typically we've talked about this on Dirty Diamonds and previous albums as well, that typically when harmonica is present on an Alice Cooper album, it's Mr. Cooper playing it. In this case, it's credited to Ozzy in terms of the harmonica playing. And he kind of co-sings the lyrics to this. Another, to me, very strong song. Some clever, very kind of clever, sinister lyrics in it. At some point in the song, Alice is singing around, "Give me a redhead, give me a blonde. When I unwind, I'm colorblind," and it's just kind of really strong lyrics from that standpoint. It's still a kind of a strong rocking song. It doesn't have the kind of sledgehammer power that the first two songs did, but it's still another very strong song. So we're three songs deep in this album, and all the first three songs have been fantastic to me.
Yeah, I think they were great. And Ozzy, for any Black Sabbath fans who are now mad at me because I said he was the second best singer of Black Sabbath, Dio, by the way, is the best singer of Black Sabbath. He does play harmonica on some Black Sabbath stuff, most famously on the song The Wizard. So it was fitting for him to take over the harmonica on this. So, Kelly, have you ever played harmonica?
Poorly, but yes, I have.
So I was on I love annoying people, and I was taking a not long, but long enough, maybe like 45-minute to an hour car trip to somewhere to shop. I purchased a harmonica without my fellow travelers knowing, and I do not play harmonica. So for the hour or whatever it was heading back, I decided that was the best time while trapped in a car with a bunch of other people to learn to play harmonica. Not everyone was enthusiastic.
Yeah, which is kind of a standard reaction to the harmonica. Are you aware of the greatest harmonica ever in a song?
I'm going to say no, because I'm not sure where you're going with this.
So we're going to go back to a passion point of mine, Captain Beefheart, who will play the harmonica and saxophone and many other things as well. But there's a song called "Nowadays a Woman Has to Hit a Man," and it kicks off with some great bluesy harmonica. So if you haven't had a chance to hear "Nowadays a Woman Has to Hit a Man" by Captain Beefheart, give it a listen if you want to hear some rockin' harmonica.
I'm going to say that I haven't, because the song isn't really ringing a bell for me. So I'm going to have to check that out. I will say, though, in Mr. Osborne's favor, that The Wizard is, off the top of my head, probably my favorite use of harmonica in a song.
Fair enough. Give Mr. Beefheart a listen, and I think he could at least make a run at it.
Nice. So that brings us to Catch Me If You Can. Thoughts?
So this is a very interesting album because we've talked through. So I think everyone's very clear how passionate Mike and I are about being fans of Alice Cooper and greatly appreciate his work. And as we've done these reviews, we've just tried to be very honest. And if there are some things that didn't work for us, we kind of talk about that. So we never really hate on it beyond maybe a couple albums where we're not as enthusiastic. But by and large, we're gigantic fans of it. This is a strange album because to me, there are no low points in this album. The only thing that happens is there are some songs that show up that don't reach the level of the things that precede them. And to me, that's Catch Me If You Can. I think this is a very, very good song. And on any other album would be one of the stronger songs on it. I think it has a hard time matching the first three songs that came before it. I still really, really like it, but it is my fourth of the four songs so far. It's my fourth favorite. It's solid. It's driving. It's where he kind of trots out arachnophobic psychopath, which is not easy to say, but it's good, and it continues to snap into the storyline really well, and I like it. I favor the first three songs slightly better than it, but this is still a very strong song. It continues the storyline. I enjoy it. I just enjoy the first three songs better.
Yeah, I really feel like Kelly hit on everything there. I don't dislike this song in any way. We just came off of three really great songs, and it's not quite as good as those. But again, one of the things I really like about this record is how consistent we are with this overarching storyline, because there's been times in Alice's catalog where you kind of lose the story on some of the air quotes concept records that have come along. Not on this record. Stay strong all the way through. That brings us to I'm in touch with your feminine, or in touch with your feminine side. Are you in touch with your feminine side, Kelly?
Maybe. I'm not 100% sure.
When was the last time you touched your feminine side, Kelly?
I'm going to have to review my notes on that and get back to you. I believe this is the second Alice Cooper parenthetical song, second behind Mike's personal favorite, Homo Sapiens No Baloney. But In Touch With is parenthetical to Your Feminine Side. Again, there hasn't been a weak song so far. If Catch Me If You Can was maybe a notch below the first three songs, to me, In Touch with Your Feminine Side resumes the same level as the first three songs. I think it's a very strong song. It's a kind of tight little back and forth lyrical delivery around you've got some scare in your hair, and it kind of continues in that kind of cadence all the way through there. And to me, one of the most kind of powerful moments in this album comes in this song where Alice says, "It's your world, but it's my street," is just, as this kind of plays through, just fits in really well with the storyline and resonates with me a lot. So I think this, again, Catch Me If You Can wasn't like a slip, but it wasn't in the same kind of esoteric air as the first three. I think, to me, In Touch with Your Feminine Side, which is the second song featured on the video, and that's kind of done with the full band. That's where you see Mr. Garrick. I think this is a very strong song and highly recommend it.
Totally agree. And this is also the only thing I have to add. This is the first Chuck Garrick co-writing credit on the album. So
yeah, it was interesting because, and these aren't folks that I'm super familiar with. Danny Saber and Greg Hampton play guitar on this one. So this is, they're not typically part of Alice's standard band. In addition to that, Carrie Kelly and Jason Hook play guitar, and they were touring with Alice with some regularity at that point in time. But yeah, this is the first time that Chuck shows up as a co-writing thing, as well as Damon Johnson, another touring Alice Cooper guitarist as well. And so Carrie Kelly is also on this as well. So this is a solid song.
It really is. And that brings us to Wrapped in Silk, the core of what our serial killer's doing here. What are your thoughts, sir?
Storyline-wise, Wrapped in Silk fits really well. I mean, it's kind of crucial to the story to kind of get this kind of piece out. It's got a great kind of guitar riff that runs through it. You know, if I've talked about kind of now the four songs that are like on the top of my list, maybe Catch Me If You Can's a notch below. I'd kind of put this in between the two, that it, again, doesn't quite reach the heights of would have been my top four. It's a very, very strong song, and it's incredibly important to the storyline. So I enjoy it.
I enjoyed it as well. Very important to the storyline. Maybe not one of my favorite songs, but again, one of the things I really appreciate about this is the storyline is clear and concise throughout, yet all of the songs can stand on their own. This is exactly what a concept album is supposed to be to me. And that brings us to Killed by Love. Kelly?
This is the only kind of full-on ballad on this album. There's another one that's kind of a hybrid. There's a ballad element to it, and then there's kind of more of a chorus, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Construct-wise, it's not surprising on an Alice Cooper album, a strong Alice Cooper album, that you're going to get hammered, and then there's going to be kind of a ballad that comes in. It stays, again, well within the storyline, carries it forward really well. I like this song. I don't have the same level of passion of my top four, but it's another very strong song. Alice has proven himself again and again to be able to execute an effective power rock ballad. I think this fits into it really well. So if you're going to put a ballad on Along Came a Spider, this is a good fit for it in terms of storyline. I think it works really well. I enjoy this song.
Yeah, I'm not a big ballad guy in general, I guess, but you know, if somebody's going to do it, Alice, I'd rather hear him do it than most. Which brings us to I'm Hungry. What are your thoughts, sir? So
in past shows, we've talked a lot about how impressed we were with kind of Alice's cleverness in lyrics and storytelling. He has a real gift for it. I think that this is one of the songs that demonstrates that incredibly, particularly within this storyline. And so when you've got things like, you know, the night's full of promise and the city's full of prey, and then later in the song, I got a kiss on my lips that leads to my place. These are just really excellent lyrics and executions within this story. I like this song quite a bit, particularly because I think this is possibly the strongest set of lyrics on the whole album, of an album with some incredible lyrics on it. And it's not a quibble. It's probably a personal fault of mine. But the only thing that kind of itches at me about this song a little bit is that the chorus, and I needed to research this, and I didn't get a chance to do it before the show. But in the movie This Is Spinal Tap, they do a song that the chorus of I'm Hungry sounds remarkably close to the This Is Spinal Tap, one of the This Is Spinal Tap songs. And that takes me off a peg just a little bit. You know, it's probably just, there's just a little bit of tonality increase to it. But I think this is possibly some of the best lyrics on the album, and it's a very good song.
Yeah, the lyrics are what really stuck with me with this song. And I really think we're looking at strong lyrics throughout this whole album. There's no baloney homo sapiens in this for me. So I think we're looking at strong lyrics throughout the whole album, and this is one that really stands out. I'm not saying musically it's not necessarily the best song, but lyrically this is one that, manages to rise a little bit above an already great, strong lyrical album. So what about the one that got away?
So any song that starts off with the first line, "You look like you might fit in the trunk of my car," is going to be a win for me. I'm just gonna, it's going to be hard for me not to like this song. I think it does fall. These are all high quality songs on this entire album. There's like these home runs, these incredibly strong ones, and there's ones that are just a notch back from them. That's where I put the one that got away a little bit, that it just doesn't grab you by the throat as hard as some of the other stuff does. But again, it starts off with "You look like you might fit in the trunk of my car." So I've got to give it props for that. So another song I very much enjoy. I don't think it's in the top tier of songs, but again, these kind of second level of songs on this album are still very, very strong. So another song I really like.
Yeah, we're in complete agreement with all of these songs so far. We talked a lot about the album in the beginning, and now we're just kind of flying through the track list because I really don't have much to add as we go through them. Again, what a great way to start. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add to it. So what about Salvation, sir?
So this is the second air quotes ballad on the album because it does begin softer. And in some of the bonus cuts, they provide an acoustic version of this as well. It's a pretty complex, well executed song in terms of the music for it. The lyrics on this album are dark and clever and strong, and so
they are dark, but dark in a different way than we got with, say, Brutal Planet.
Yeah, because it's so much POV of this individual, and it's so consistent with that, and you can kind of buy it. And when he says, "I just did what the voices told me to do," you totally buy into that. The chorus is kind of picks the pace and strength of the song up. This is one, and we've talked about it in some of the past albums, that Alice is born again and has some strong Christian beliefs. I think this is one song. It's called Salvation. Not surprising in a song called Salvation that there's tonality in there that kind of talks about being saved. So there's a little bit of that in there as well. Again, fits in the storyline well. Good continuation of what they've got on. I put it again in second tier in terms of the song, but a nice song.
Yeah, it would be a second tier one for me. But again, we're only one track left. There is no skips on this album for me. I'm not really sure. What's weird, and I think you might have said this or something similar to this earlier in the review, but what's strange is I'm not sure what are the playlist contenders necessarily on this for me, but there's definitely no skips, and this is a consistent, really good record.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it is where I've been so conflicted on where to place this on the rankings, and when I compare it to other things, because I think in terms of something that hangs together, Alice has done a lot of strong concept albums. I don't know if you'd agree 100% with me on this, Mike, but I think probably the strongest execution of a concept was From the Inside.
I would agree with that.
In terms of going forward. And, they're probably, collectively, if you go kind of song by song on this, there are stronger songs on this than From the Inside. But there isn't that Nurse Rosetta. There isn't that, and I know this is stupid for Veronica's sake. For me, it's just a passion point of mine.
Well, it's funny, not just for the concept, but to bring out, because I'm not sure where I'm going to place this album yet, but to bring out From the Inside, because that's the one that I struggle with the most. And literally every week when we come back to this, because presumably we could still, change our minds and move some stuff around. From the Inside is so tough for me because the only thing like that and Killer are so close. And in my mind, I'm constantly flip-flopping them because Killer has some songs that are not as strong. And Killer is not as consistent an album as From the Inside for me. But at the same time, I don't know that anything from the Inside hits the same peaks as Killer. And then we get into my issues with the mix from the Inside. So it's interesting because not only do I think I completely agree with you that this is, right behind that in terms of consistency, this is another album where I don't necessarily know, especially going back through it, are there the huge peaks? This is a very consistent album, but, are there songs that are jumping out at me as this has to be on my playlist as we go through it?
Yeah, it's weird because this is, Vengeance is Mine, Wake the Dead, I Know Where You Live, are In Touch with Your Feminine Side. These are great songs. I'm not sure that they break into the playlist, but there's nothing, that's not criticism of these songs. But so I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it, but this is, to me, the most consistently strong Alice album in a long time. We talk about a lot of them, and every once in a while, this album's really great, and then there's just kind of a little hiccup here or there, and there's just really no hiccups on this album. It just kind of rolls through, stays consistent, and I don't know if it's just simply because it's the darkness of the storyline that it's hard to kind of go, yeah, let me grab onto Vengeance is Mine. But boy, Vengeance is Mine is a killer song.
Yeah, it really is. So what about I Am the Spider and the epilogue?
So we get in the epilogue, and this is where, and Mike spoiled it for all of you to begin with, appropriately so. This is a Steven album.
Well, it was spoiled before. That was not a secret. That was something I knew before the album came out.
Right. Well, yeah. If you look at the artwork that supports it, it's Steven. So it should come as no surprise. This is kind of, and you've mentioned this in some past reviews, when there's all of a sudden kind of preacher Alice, minister Alice kind of talking to the congregation. This is totally that in terms of I Am the Spider. There's some spoken parts to this, and there's some sung parts of this. They work incredibly well together. The musical part of this, the I Am the Spider, kind of closes this album off. And we've talked about past concept albums where the very end, it doesn't necessarily get wrapped up really well, whether it was from Alice Cooper Goes to Hell or some of the other albums. It's just like it doesn't necessarily wrap as well. This does clearly. This is a tight album all the way through. This closes things off well. You move through the song, which kind of provides some closure to it, and then into the spoken Alice, where he reveals, we've been in this room for 28 years, Stephen. How could we have done this? And then, again, because this is such a kind of strong, the words in this album are so strong to kind of finish off. And I think they use this in some of the promotional materials for it. You trap, you kill, you eat. That kind of wraps up at the very tail end of this in the spoken part. And it fits so well. It wraps this up well. I think it's a very strong point of the album. And it's important, I think, as well as this album has done to carry the storyline forward, to kind of wrap it up and tie it up in a nice tight bow in silk, I guess. But it finishes the album to me very strong.
Completely agree again. We are very much on the same page for this, which is why I'm interested to see, are we going to be on the same page for our rankings? But first, we need our Pat Boone song.
So this is not an album that lends itself well to Pat Boone at all, because to me there is no song on this that fits for Pat Boone. I just can't think of a song that Pat Boone can kind of pull off. So the best I could do was to go Vengeance is Mine as the song, and the supporting video for Vengeance is Mine is Pat doing things like cutting in front of people at the bank teller line, or cutting off someone trying to get into a parking spot, or very minimal things there, is the only way I can make a Pat Boone, because this is an album devoid of Pat Boone songs. And so I just think Vengeance is Mine, with Pat doing very silly vengeance-like moments, is the best I could do.
Yeah, this is a really, really tough one for the Pat Boone song. And I'm going to kind of do a cheat a little bit for mine. And I'm going to say Wrapped in Silk, but he would make it about silk clothes. And I could see like a big, like sort of like rolls of silk with women dancing and him wrapping them up in silk and things like that, and making it this really cheesy, campy variety show sort of performance.
Yeah, it's just, and we both tried hard here, but man,
yeah, it's the best I got for you.
it is ridiculously hard to put a Pat Boone song on this one, because it's just the dark.
It's tough. You know what? That's a positive thing to say, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, going back to how strong this album is, it's dark, it's consistent, it brings a great story. But equally difficult, I think, is now we have to rank it on our list. What are you thinking, sir?
This is hard. So I guess the good news on this was, and we've kind of talked about this over the last several albums, that we kind of came in going like, oh, I really love this thing. It's going to do incredibly well. And again, everything's relative here, folks. Beyond maybe the bottom 3 or 4 albums on here, Mike and I are in love with everything else Alice does. So it's all relative. So where does this thing fit into that canon? So this goes pretty high for me. What I'm trying to kind of keep in mind is I got paranormal coming up, and I'm going to need to leave some room for paranormal because it's pretty incredible. But I go pretty high on my list. I love School's Out. I think for what this is a better album than School's Out. And that's number 7 on my list. Brutal Planet is number 6 on my list. And that's tough because Brutal Planet is an amazing album in many respects. But kind of re-listening through this, I was like, wow, so there's like nothing even close to a skip on this. There's incredible things on it. So I'm going to nudge it above Brutal Planet. So then it comes to, I get into Welcome to My Nightmare and Killer. So we're up to number 5 and 4 on my list. While there is a heck of a lot more power in Along Came a Spider, there's still something kind of magical for me about Welcome to My Nightmare. It's up a little higher on my list than yours, Mike, but it's at my number 5. So I'm going to place it actually on my list as number 6 between Welcome to My Nightmare and Brutal Planet.
That's really interesting because it's actually going to be, and especially as we talk it out, I think it's going to be my new number 6. It's going to slightly edge out School's Out, and really what it kind of came down to was it was the same thing as the From the Inside versus Killer thing. While I think that this is in some ways a more consistent record than Brutal Planet has slightly higher peaks for me, similar to Killer versus From the Inside. So this is my new number 6.
Yeah, and obviously, folks, you can't go wrong with either of these albums. Very different from the industrial Brutal Planet to this, which is definitely just kind of that hard rock kind of deal. But yeah, it's a strong one. And I had, you and I talked about it, that we knew that this was underappreciated. But as I went through to prepare for it, I'm like, yeah, it's like way underappreciated. This is really, really strong. So,
it is. It's a really strong record. I'd hope, if nothing else, if you take anything away from this review, if you've never heard this album or maybe you haven't listened to it in a while, go and check this one out. You definitely are missing out.
So what I'm particularly excited about, with the notable exception of Killer, when we have been positive on Alice albums, or predominantly or strongly positive, they have done well in views and they have done well in likes on YouTube. So I'm hoping this one's going to do pretty well on there. We were very complimentary on Killer. But as we mentioned on previous shows, Killer doesn't do too well on YouTube in terms of the likes and dislikes.
Again, though, Killer has a lot of views, and it also gets a lot of interaction. So
it's our number one review. Just spoiler, folks. Mike and I were going to continue the conversations to say we might redo the Killer review and see if we can put a version out there that people don't hate as much as the one we did before, which I still don't 100% understand. But I think this one will do well. And it's just, I said, it's easy to talk positively about this album because this is a great album.
Yeah, it's a great record. What more could you possibly want from this review? Make sure if you're on YouTube that you like it, that you leave a comment. And that, friends, is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Stop the broadcast.